لا كويس كده.
Then can we minimize the
Okay. It gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce Dr. Mohammed Abdul-Mageed. Dr. Mohammed Abdul-Mageed is a Canada Research Chair in Natural Language Processing and Machine Learning. He's also an Associate Professor at the University of British Columbia. He holds joint appointments in the School of Information and the Department of Linguistics, as well as an associate membership in computer science. He has a very long bio, and we have a very detailed bio about Dr. Mohammed on the ACLing website. But I'm just going to mention that he is a founding member of the Center of Artificial Intelligence, Decision Making and Action, and a member of the Institute of Computing, Information and Cognitive Systems. He has major contributions that have made him really one of the top researchers and one of the well-known figures in the field of computational linguistics. I'm not going to keep you from his interesting presentation any longer. I'm sure that everyone is like myself, really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for being here today with us, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I would like to thank you all for investing from your valuable time to be here today. All due thanks to Professor Abdullah and Professor Khalid, and also the conference chairs, Dr. Samah and Dr. Khalid, and also Dr. Sharif, and for all of you for really coming to the event today and being with us. As Professor Abdullah mentioned in the beginning, the discussion about research universities, because the best investment is really in people. If you want to succeed, you have to start with people, and you have to invest with people, in people. And this is actually in the title of my talk today. I'm going to talk to you about AI. One of the biggest focuses on in my own research program is about how to make AI relevant to people's lives. As you know, there is a lot of progress right now happening. It's a big transformative moment at a global scale. And the challenge really is to how to make sure that we leverage this technology in order to make people's lives better, easier, to make services more accessible, and so on and so forth. So this is really the focus that I'm going to have today. So I titled my talk, AI for People, Culturally Grounded Reasoning-Centered Language Models. I also have to say, before I start, I'm very happy to be here in this country, and I was sitting there, and I see sort of Sheikh Zayed, and I was like feeling really happy just to be around you, and around the people of this beautiful country. So let me start. And before I start, actually, I want to mention I have one slide, this slide, just because I always think about, okay, as a researcher, I'm spending a big chunk of my life, just doing this. And is that meaningful? I mean, why do Why do I do this? Okay, it's a job, like I'm earning a living, support a family and all of that. But, do I contribute? Like, what is it that I'm doing to other people around me? And I'm always reminded that the world today has pressing problems, real challenges. And I put four of these here. One of them is misinformation, as you know, another is global conflict, climate change is a third one, and really social inequality in different societies, different parts of the world. And I think, as scholars, we can contribute to, if not solving these problems, maybe alleviating them. Even if it is a small contribution, it is still a contribution. And so I think consciously we can always have this in the back of our minds while we are, investing all these efforts that, okay, can I do something that can, help people one way or another? And it is with that background that I kind of spend the time I'm spending on research. I have almost two big threads in my own research. One of them I'm not going to talk about today. I have some work on health, in particular on protein sequencing and so on. So that is not something that I will talk about today, because the focus today is going to be on language processing side of things. Although, like we actually end up using the same methods, that we use for processing speech and text and image and so on, we apply them on, protein sequencing. We really like use, machine translation methods, speech processing methods on the same types of problems there, and they work like magic, like neural networks, like change how we do things, and so on. Okay, with that said, the second thread that I will focus on today is really AI, grounding AI in people's lives. And there are two themes that I focus on. One of them is related to creating technologies for Africa as a continent, big continent really. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then technologies for the Arab world. And this is under the big umbrella of massively multilingual speech and language processing. Okay, let me go from there. As I mentioned, that big theme of massively multilingual language models. I mean, as you can see, there are lots of big tech and other research labs and so on working with this as well. How do we create language models that can cover a lot of languages that serve big populations and so on? And we've been working on some of this. And the biggest technology that you are hearing about today is that of large language models, right? Large language models came out and they became very popular, very integrated in people's lives today. I mean, there's been like only like 2 or 3 years since like that ChatGPT moment, but everybody uses these right now. And the big question that is relevant to this discussion today is, are these models inclusive? And by inclusive, we can talk about cultural inclusivity, we can talk about linguistic inclusivity, and so on. And the early work that came out, once these models became popular is, okay, let's study actually if they have any cultural biases. And of course they do, and this is like one study that was done years ago that shows that, okay, the darker the region on the map, the more biased toward these cultures this particular model, this was ChatGPT, is. So basically, it doesn't really know about our region in the Arab world. It doesn't know much about Africa. It doesn't know much about Asia, for example. So you can imagine, like, immediately that this is really Western-centric. I mean, it uses like more like Western data, Western culture, and so on. So, okay, this is about cultural bias. There's also, this work came from my own lab about linguistic bias. We kind of like wanted to know, okay, how many languages can a model like ChatGPT, for example, know? And by know is like, I'll just give it a piece of text and I'll say, what language is this? I mean, if it is English, okay, for sure, it will know it. If it is French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and so on, okay, these are all Western languages. We ended up, and that was in 2024, finding that, okay, it can know like, around 30 languages in like high accuracy, like 90 something %. But then if you go to 50 languages, then that accuracy drops. Then if you go like to 60, 70, and so on. So it actually doesn't really know much about, the majority of the world's languages today. And the idea is, if I ask very big, I'm not here to test you, but okay, in the interest of engagement, how many languages do you think the world has today? Is it like more like 3,000? Is it 4, 5, 10? Okay, 3,000. Raise your hand. 4, 4,000, 5,000, 8, 10,000. Okay, it's something in between. I mean, well, the real answer is really we don't know, okay? Just to be honest. But the estimate is a little bit above 7,000 languages. That's like a kind of a reasonable estimate, okay? And so, like, okay, if you have a model that is being hailed as, serving humanity, and it doesn't really know much about the world's majority of languages, like knows like 50 languages or so. How about like the rest? So it's absent. So this is like huge linguistic bias. Of course, since 2024 until now, okay, they are kind of increasing, and I can immediately see, based on very recent work that we have also done, that this gap is being bridged. Like Gemini 3, like the model that just came out of Google, it seems like, okay, it's actually covering more languages, and we've done like some benchmarking on African languages, for example, and it's kind of getting, of course, not covering, but they're working hard. Okay, one big problem, I talked about the cultural bias. One big problem is like when we build LLMs, one idea is like, how do we make them quote unquote aligned to humans? And aligned here means, it's a kind of a term that it just means like, think or maybe respond in a way that you would expect. If you are in a particular culture and you are using these models to get something done, you want the model to actually sort of like think or respond or engage with you from your own perspective. Like, for example, if you ask the model, what type of drink should I have after I pray? It shouldn't say, if you are in an Arab culture, it shouldn't say something that, that culture is not used to, and so on and so forth. So that's called the alignment problem. And there's a lot of work that is done after you actually pre-train the large language model to align it, to make sure that it's actually safe, is actually helpful, it is actually something that people will end up using and benefiting from. Okay, that's like in each big tech research lab, there is a team for safety, for example. There's a team that focuses on culture and alignment and so on. So these are very, very specialized threads of research. And now I will merge from there to quickly to talk about Africa and some of the work that we've been doing for Africa for the past, I would say, 5-6 years. Okay, so Africa is a huge continent, and I mentioned to you that there's an estimate of about 7,000 languages in the world today. Do you know how many languages, like, a guesstimate in Africa? Like, okay, 500? Raise your hand. 1,000? Okay. 1,500? Okay. Even Dr. Abdullah is raising his hand. Come on. I would say close, but the estimate is 2,000. And that is impressive, like one continent. When you see Africa on the map, it doesn't do justice to Africa. Africa is really huge. Distance-wise, the space of the land there is really massive. And when you say 2,000 languages, like that's like more than 1/4 of the world's. So think about that richness. So I kind of put this picture there just to show like this huge potential in this continent. And this is one reason there is a lot of interest in Africa nowadays, at a global scale. And so, okay, here's the answer. So 2,000 plus languages. And, when we say languages, we have to take this with it seems like I'm going to spend more time on each slide than I expected. And I'll end up not covering my slides, but okay, I'll try to do better. but you know, there's a lot of linguistic richness in Africa. Some of our early work really tried to focus on understanding the linguistic landscape in Africa. So before we actually tried to do machine learning on these languages and so on, we wanted to know what is going on. Like, what are these languages? And you know, are they languages? Are they varieties of languages, like meaning dialects, you know, of particular languages and so on? Because we cannot really study something that we don't really understand very well. There's no you know, background information that is sufficient for us to really kind of talk with confidence about these languages. So one of the things that we had in mind when we were starting this work is that, well, we're talking about languages, but these languages are actually representing people. The language is very powerful. It's very important in our lives. We use it when we go to the market, when we eat, when we travel, when we celebrate, when we pass wisdom from one generation to another. And so if you care about the identity of your people, you need to care about the language. Because language carries identity. It preserves your history. It helps you reason about the future. It captures people's imagination. It moves people. You use language to motivate people, to encourage people, and so on. So we had it in mind that, okay, we're talking about the language landscape of Africa, but this is really a representation of the people of Africa. And then I can say the same thing about, you know, the languages of the Arab world, or the languages in Asia, or Russia, or any other place. Actually, I'm talking about Africa now, but I want you to imagine, like, if you are working on some other range of languages, or even a particular language, some of these facts also, you know, just transfer immediately to whatever language of your interest. So we've built over the years quite a bit for the African continent. We started out before ChatGPT. You know, I mean, I think a lot of this work came early when people started talking about language models anyways. I mean, language model is not a new concept. It's like really old concept. But you know, the most recent kind of like you know, excitement about it came when the paper was published by a team in Google. Attention is all you need, and then they used that technology to build the BERT language model, if you know, and then it went from there to like building like, you know, text-to-text transformers like the T5 language models, and then like from there were bigger models and so on, like GPT type models and so on. We started actually building for Africa very early on, before these large language models became very popular. So I will walk you through some of these efforts very, very quickly. But you know, this summarizes on the top right-hand side was our linguistic analysis of the landscape in Africa. On the bottom right-hand side is our work. We created a language model called Serengeti. It's all, you know, inspired by you know, the environment, like, you know, the African theme there. This is an encoder language model for Africa. It's for natural language understanding. And then we ended up building another model called Cheetah for African language generation. I'll spend 1 minute on each of these. This was one of our kind of early works. This was with my then PhD student, now assistant professor at the University of Alberta in Canada. Ife Adibara, she is originally from Nigeria. She's also Canadian. And really what we wanted to do is to propose that idea of Afrocentric natural language processing. You know, the idea is, if you want to build natural language technologies for Africa, these technologies should be from the ground up built with the interest of the people of Africa in mind, meaning, you know, you want to build the technologies that people need, not the technologies that you think people need. So you have to talk to people. Like, this is why, you know, if you want to serve a population, talk to that population. Don't just like impose what you think. I'm talking to myself in a sense, you know. This is why I think about what I do. I don't say I am building for Africa. I say I am building with Africa. So we just work together. This is a community approach to kind of creation of technologies. And I'll actually show you by the end of this conversation some of the community work we have been doing. Okay, in this paper, we really kind of like laid some of the ideas that we think should be there when we build technologies for the African continent. And we talked about 100 African languages, what types of language families, guess what? Like languages are also categorized into different families and so on, and like where these languages are, and try to characterize these languages and so on. And one thing that really struck us at that time is that there was this paper that came out in 2020 that said, it's desperate. You really will not be able to develop for Africa. The great majority of African languages, like the red part here, are left behind. There will never be technologies that will serve these languages. That's 2020. And this is when we actually started, and I'm very glad to say that we were able, I mean, not only my lab, but many other groups, but we really invested a lot in this, as I will show you. We were able to reverse this thinking. Today, as we stand, we've really built lots of technology, and this is wrong. We proved that, okay, if you care and if you invest, you can actually change that, thinking. So we wanted to say, okay, so what should we do? Like after we talk about the linguistic landscape and the analyze and so on, what is the first thing that you want to do? Well, we first wanted to know, if you give me a piece of text, I wanted to know which language it is. Is this like Yoruba? Is it Swahili? Is it Kenya, Rwanda? What language is it, right? And we discovered that at the time, and this was around early 2021, and then we published a paper in 2022 on this. We discovered that the big tech, can't actually do that task. Like we look at Twitter at the time, it's now called X, it was called Twitter at the time, and we found that it was only able to detect when you post a tweet at the time, they will label it with the language, you put a language there. They were able to do this for, I think, 13 African languages. And so what we did is we built a tool, we called it AfroLit, for African language identification, that is able to detect 517 or like 14 African languages. That was a big thing at that time, and we kind of invested a couple of years actually working on this. So that was the first thing that we did. And then from there, we said, okay, so this is a tool that covers all these languages. These languages come from all these places. They are very linguistically diverse languages. They belong to different language families. They are written in different types of scripts. There is lots of information on this in these slides. I'm just going to skim over them very quickly. But just to show you the diversity, the way these different languages are written and so on. And we spent a lot of work actually trying to enable this work and collect the data for it and so on. And then we put like an online interface. So if anybody has a piece of text and you want to test, this is a demo for the tool. And this actually, so we did this and we released the tool publicly. So like it's being used now by many people around the world. And I'm very happy to report there is work that we are doing now that we are going to push this to 700 plus languages. This is not published work, but one of my PhD students working on this right now was a postdoc. And yeah, we're kind of like taking this to even a better stage. Okay, from there, and these are like, QR code and so on for, that tool that, they are online. Very quickly, Serengeti is, and that was like another work that we did. It's a massively multilingual language models for Africa, and they focused on natural language understanding. And natural language understanding very quickly here, things like if you wanted to know, if you have a piece of text and you want to know what are the named entities, names of people, places, organizations, and things like that. This is just one example of a technology that is enabled by this language model called named entity recognition. Why is it important? Very important for information extraction. If you like think about, for example, you have like financial records and you want to extract the names of a bank or like people who have transactions like insurance, like whatever, and think about any domain, like health, whatever domain, you can just apply that foundational technology. This is only one technology among many other technologies that This model was actually showed to kind of do state of the art on these languages at the time. And I mean, when we publish papers, we like to have like big tables with like, how is our model comparing to other people's models? And like, okay, here's your table if you care about this. But there's a column that shows like performance against many other models and so on. Then there came the cheetah language model that does natural language generation. And one example of natural language generation is, for example, if I wanted to summarize text, I have a piece of text and I just want to extract a summary from it. And this is very useful because the world today is drowning in loads and loads of information, and it's beyond human ability to actually process this information, let alone make informed decisions on these information. So you must use computers to do this. And summarization is one way to enable humans to actually start to interact with these loads of information. This is a problem called information overload. And it's becoming increasingly problematic over time. As people use computers, they generate huge amounts of data. So there's no way humans can do this, okay? It's a done deal, so don't even think about it otherwise. And so this model was trying to actually approach these natural language generation technologies. Does many things. I mentioned summarization as one example technology there. And again, like tables was like performance benchmarked against other tables across these different tasks and so on and so forth. Okay, going from there, we also cared about machine translation. So we wanted to be able to translate from different languages into African languages. And again, this area was, when we started, there isn't really much work being done there. So we built a model called Tokan that covers 150 African language pairs. And then we took this and we sort of like, we actually built we took that cheetah model and we used that the backbone of this machine translation technology. And then we showed the utility of this model against models that were built by Cohere AI, for example, by Facebook. They have like no language left behind the models and whatnot. And so in the paper, you will find all the details about how we compare to many of these. And in the context of this work, we also created some technologies that are now being embedded at a global scale, even beyond African languages. This is one way when you evaluate machine translation on rare languages and low resource languages and so on. So we created this SB Blue. It's like just a metric for when you evaluate machine translation, and it's now actually integrated in a big central hub for doing machine translation in general beyond these African languages. And again, like results against other models and whatnot. This is compared to Cohere's AIA model at that time. And this is no language left behind, which was very, very popular at that time. We actually do 10% better than Facebook's models there. Okay, very quickly, two things, and I will shift it to Arabic. So I kept it the Arabic until the end so that I don't, I know many people here care about Arabic. So some more excitement coming up. This work was funded by the Gates Foundation through our collaborators at Clear Global. And basically two things we have done. We wanted to take all the work that was done on text on African languages and all the work that was done on speech on African languages. And we sort of like tried to map all these efforts at a global scale. So basically, we wanted to understand where do we stand? Where are the technologies that being created at a global scale in terms of their ability to perform on very wide ranges of African languages, whether this is text or speech. And so we built Sahara, which is a benchmark and the leaderboard and a cluster of platforms and so on for African text. And in the context of this, we also did a lot of analyses and we studied how language policies within each country can actually affect and impact the technology that is being built for that country. Like very quickly, if you say, I care about this particular language, it's a national language, you remember that some countries actually have more than one language. I mean, some countries have more than one form. In Canada, for example, we have English and we have French as two formal languages of the country. And also we have a lot of indigenous languages that the federal government cares about and actually funds resources for, and so on. And so, like, if you adopt informed policies as to how you support building for these languages, this will immediately reflect to how good the technologies that people create are for these languages. So we did some empirical analysis to just to show how the correlation between the policy and the current landscape of technology is. Yeah, you can read the paper for more details, but this is what it is. And I mean, the platform is actually live right now. I don't have time to show it, but here's an official QR code for it. And it's really, we spent like a year doing this work, and it covers many technologies across many different tasks. And we actually take all the big models, like even we took Gemini 3, which just like released less than a month ago, and we benchmark there, and we can immediately see how the technology grew for, within the last, 4 months or 6 months and so on. So we can always use this benchmark as we update it as well to show the trajectory of the technology. And this is important for policymakers, for professionals, for engineers, and so on, to kind of make decisions about what technologies to use and whatnot. So this actually can save millions of dollars if you are interested in these languages as you plan. And we've done some of this work also in Arabic. Comprehensive evaluation, and then we did the same thing for speech. I'm not going to actually explain speech very much, but I mean, these were like 2 papers we published. We presented this in China last month in EMLP, which is one of our big conferences, and it covers a lot of speech technologies for a lot of African countries. And we are launching a platform for this very soon. It's already built, but we haven't publicized it yet. It's very nice. Okay, going from there to Arabic. I hope you're excited. I don't know how I'm doing in terms of time with Dr. Khalid, 34 minutes. So kind of about right. Arabic is my passion. I love the Arabic language. The population in the Arab world is probably over 400 million people who speak Arabic as their native tongue. Except that when you say Arabic, you think Arabic is one language. It is not. Arabic is, okay, are you ready? It's a collection of languages. It's a collection of languages, language varieties, and dialects. And the reason I say it is a collection of languages, not a single language, is the following. How do you define what a language is? Well, a language is something that if 2 people from 2 different places speak to one another, it's mutually intelligible. They understand each other. Okay, if you are Moroccan and somebody else is Egyptian, and the Moroccan is talking to the Egyptian is most probably not going to understand what the Moroccan is saying. Am I right, Dr. Samha? Okay, great. So I have established my point by just one example. And that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of variation and richness within the Arab world. And the dialectal variation is one of these. The linguistic variation is one of these. And, I can spend more time talking about this. But, for example, even if you go to the Quran was revealed, the Arab at that time, the Arabs, the way the tribes speak and so on, there are different recitations of the Quran. And there's a little bit of variation. The Quran is one thing. There is no difference between any version and it's like a single version. But the way people would read it and so on. So anyways, coming back to Arabic is very rich, very big population. It's not even only the Arab world. There's like people outside the Arab world who also speak Arabic and as maybe second language and so on. You go to Cyprus, you go to like even North America, Europe, Asia, lots of places, they speak Arabic, and Arabic is part of their identity one way or another. If not by birth, it's maybe because of religion or because of like some ties between them and their families in the Arab world and so on. So this is to say there's a huge motivation for studying Arabic and building for Arabic. And we can, at a high level, talk about Arabic as classical Arabic. This is, the language of مكرر مفرر مقبل مدبر معا كجلمود صخر حطه السيل من علي. Okay, it's like poetry that did exist before, even Islam. The message of Islam was revealed. Like Arabic, has always been like the Arabs had an oral culture. They kind of like, that's their commodity. They like poetry, and like that's the language of that period of time. Okay, what we call it classical Arabic. Then there is like that sort of like quote unquote, it's almost artificial modern standard Arabic, and that's the type of Arabic that you would find in modern day newspapers, in educational systems, and so it's one way of like when Arabs try to speak or write in a way that they think other people from other places in the Arab world should understand them, that's what they resorted to. Okay, and then there is a lot of dialectal variation. That's like what people say in the street and so on, depending where you are in the Arab world. And the Arab world is vast. It cuts across 2 different continents. Asia and Africa, and there is a huge variety in terms of the culture. And look at architecture, for example, celebrations, like the way people attire. The food sometimes also varies and so on, like depending on like couscous or mahshi or like whatever. Like you go to different places, and then even the coffee varies sometimes, right? And so again, when we talk about language, we're not talking about language, we're talking about people. And this is why I say AI for people, because language is a vehicle that carries what people think and how they carry themselves on their daily activities. And it's kind of the container of their culture, as the kind of literal translation of what we say in Arabic, وعاء الثقافة, اللغة وعاء الثقافة. So I don't know. So we do a lot of work. I try to cluster the work we do. This is one way to cluster the work we do, but really take this with a grain of salt. I just do a lot of work, and I don't care where it should fall. But some work related to education, archives and culture, health, finance, and so on. Early on, like talking about language model, we started very early on. We built one model called Jasmine, this was at the time where people were kind of like arguing, oh, what about language models? Like if we build language models for Arabic, what does it mean in terms of like, will people use it to generate text that looks like Quran somehow or Hadith? Like there were lots of arguments at that time. It was very, very early on, and we were a little bit worried about some of this, and we were kind of like very cautious. But we built it anyways, and we published a paper. And this was very fluent. So when we give the model, for example, some prompts that says like, دعا الفرنسي ميشيل بلاتيني رئيس الاتحاد الأوروبي لكرة القدم بإنشاء قوة شرطة دولية مخصصة للتعامل مع أحداث الشغب المرابطة بالرياضة. وقال بلاتيني في مؤتمر. So the model actually continues from there. وقال بلاتيني في مؤتمر صحفي في مدينة زيورخ السويسرية أمس الأول يجب أن تكون هناك شرطة في كرة القدم. وأضاف بلاتيني blah blah blah. So this is actually the model continuing. You see that it was a piece of text, and it actually continues. It was very fluent. We found that we gave it to humans and said, is this by a human or by a model? And they choose, a human model. We give them some text from humans and some text completed by models. And then we found that it's random. Humans don't really recognize what is a human and what is a model, which means like the model is very fluent. Okay. And we tried this actually also on dialects. So here's like one tweet, من خلص شغلنا ونخلص يا هاني بيه ولا. And then the model said A. And then the model goes on, هاني بيه أيوة يا مدام أنا عايز أتكلم معاك شوية في موضوع مهم جدا جدا ومش عارف. This is Egyptian Arabic. And so we kind of like show how fluent the model actually, in conversations, it can actually carry out a conversation. And then like, there's a little bit of Saudi dialect there and the text there and so on. And then because I like poetry and I like Al-Mutanabbi, and I said, let's train it on some poetry and see if it what will do. So the first part is, like really original poetry from Al-Mutanabbi. But the second part is like we give it a prompt. وحرق قلبه ممن قلبه شابه ومن بجسمي وحالي عنده سقم and so on. And then the model like goes like لا تحسبوا رقصي بينكم طربا فالطير يرقص مذبوحا من الألم يا لائمي في هواه والهوى قدر لو لم تطق منه حلوا لم تبقي whatever it is. Like it's not really المتنبي, but it's just trying to do something that's sensible. I think it can trick some humans. So this was in 2022, and this was quite early on, like trying to play with language models for Arabic, and can we get somewhere? And from there, we went to other things. This is, can you tell what this is? Can somebody know? Yes. Okay, but looks like Arabic. Do you know Arabic? Okay. Urdu? Okay, good. I thank you very much. This is the Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi. On one of the walls, I took this literally, it was my camera, it was my phone. This is مقدمة ابن خلدون. One page from مقدمة ابن خلدون, the introduction of Ibn Khaldun, which is like one very popular scholar in the history of the Arab world. And it's like really printed on one wall within the متحف اللوفر في Abu Dhabi. And the idea there is we are digitizing things related to our culture, and we're kind of like displaying it in particular ways and so on. And that just means that, oh, can we compute over these types of traditional texts? And if we need to compute on traditional texts, then it's handwritten. So maybe we need to do handwriting recognition or optical character recognition, and it's like we will need these technologies. But the main idea here is that AI is related to culture. You can actually start thinking about how can we leverage AI to relate to our culture and our history and our civilization, and as we kind of bring up our next generation to connect them to their history as they think also about their future. So that's kind of motivational, and that takes us to the idea of cultural heritage. One big problem is that a lot of the content that continues to exist today, and we cannot really compute over it, is really in manuscripts. That's a lot of text that's sitting out there. We don't know what to do with it. And it's written in different ways, very challenging to computers and so on. When I visited في أبو ظبي الأرشيف الوطني, I think one of the colleagues there said, oh, you see all these newspapers, they are old newspapers. Sometimes we get requests to look for something within these, and we just do it manually. Can we build like OCR systems to process these and so on? So I started thinking about that problem. And then this is not a done deal. We're still working on this, but this is a paper that we published. We created a technology called Qalam. It does optical character recognition, and it does handwriting recognition. It does very well. It was a state of the art. This is like a couple of years ago, except that it's limited to a line based. So like it doesn't take a whole page and processes it and so on. It just takes one line at a time. And also, I think the problem of optical, like handwriting recognition is still very, very challenging. So we're still working on this. We have actually ongoing projects on this. But we could show that, okay, so we can go somewhere and we can actually read the current state of the art and so on. It's very complicated. Like if you have to do handwriting, like this, just explaining the complexity, the different shapes, the critics and the ligatures and the overlap between different characters, the loops. When people write, they try to be very creative, في مصر, in Egypt, for example, we have this expression نكشف فراخ, which is like, somebody is like very bad handwriting, and like, doctors especially are kind of popular / notorious, like, but, I've known some doctors that really have beautiful handwriting. Anyways, and there are challenges related to the layout of the documents, not always like the regular ways. You can like have the text like flipped upside down, footnote, like, whatever, diagonal. And so you have to process all of this, and you have to deal with it somehow. So it's a very complex problem. And yeah, this has, a lot of history is registered this way. Actually, also, in the old days, like courts, when they used to write laws and like so on, this was before the computers and the typewriters and so on. There's a lot that's registered there. We also work on speech technology. So I have a few more slides. I'll try to be very, very quick. I'll just say that we also build speech technologies, and then I will jump to 3 examples of community projects that we do, and then that would be it. Okay, so speech technologies. Okay, so we try to work for Arabic speech recognition, and we put some work there. We've kind of published a bunch of papers. I have currently 2 PhD students working on this. And we did some work on Arabic. One highlight is this: we try to build automatic speech recognition that covers Arabic dialects. I think ASR, automatic speech recognition for standard Arabic, is quite good right now. So that the dialects are very challenging. So this was one project. I called it Casablanca because I was in Morocco, and I kind of like, okay, I felt like, okay, I'll just call it Casablanca. Casablanca in Arabic is a Dar el Bayda, which is a city in Morocco. And so, although the student who's leading this work, my PhD student, he's from Jordan. His name is Bashar Talafa. This covers, Mauritania, Morocco, Algeria, Palestine, Jordan, Egypt, United Arab Emirates. I had students from UAE working with me on this project, and then Yemen. And we collected these data sets, and then we manually transcribed them by hand. This was a laborious work. It took a lot of time to do this. And then now we have created a data set that we released so that people can actually take and benchmark their work on, and so on and so forth. This was the first community project that we carried out, and it had a lot of people. I think we had like 20 different authors from different organizations and so on participating in it. That was the start of like, okay, I'm thinking, oh, we should do more community work. Like, we should work together at a global scale. And then, something about machine translation as a technology is very, very important, machine translation, because you can take things from one language and then turn them to another language. I can tell you stories about machine translation when I travel to Costa Rica and I'm riding a taxi, and the taxi driver we can only communicate like through his phone, and so on. So we've done a lot of this. So some of it was done for Arabic. So this was a toolkit that we built a few years ago, and then this is actually publicly released. This was, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. At that time, that was a state of the art. It's not anymore after all these language models and so on. But we are actually doing more work on machine translation. And we released this. Anybody can download it, work with it, and so on. It takes from 20 languages into standard Arabic. It doesn't have any dialects, but it does standard Arabic. We have a very, very, very large and very, very, very ambitious project on Arabic machine translation right now that in 3 months should be public, and it's very nice. I think it will make a big, big impact because it's a multi-country collaboration. We did this I talked about Tokan that does machine translation for African countries. This came earlier in my work, in my presentation today. And we said it's even better than Facebook's models. Okay, very quickly about large language models in education. One of the works we did, this is a paper that was published, I think a year ago. We called it the Ghazal. And the idea here is that you have all of these LLMs. Can they think about Nahu, Arabic grammar, the way that it is done? If I ask it to do i'rab, for example, or I ask it to give me al-isti'ara, the metaphor, or like, to refine the text, for example, or like to explain the rule. Like if I give it a piece of text that has issues, like grammatical errors, for example, can it correct these for me? And then after it corrects, can it explain the rule for me? And so we build a data set to do this. We also have done some work on Arabic grammatical error correction. That's a kind of independent from this work, but it's kind of related somehow, like independent publication, but it's related to this theme. So here is one of the things that we did. So for example, we give a grammatical error correction model a piece of text, and this piece of text maybe has some grammatical errors, and then it goes to the model, and the model will be able to correct the text and so on. And then on top of this, we ask it to explain what was wrong and what is the grammatical rule, and so on and so forth. I have my student working on this, Sang-Yun. Kun, who is from Korea, but he's working on Arabic sometimes. Yeah, and you know, this is the input, like I say, look for the error in the sentence, and give us a sentence that has an error, and then, you know, it actually can explain. And so this is a data set that we built for this. Okay, I will jump to another. So we built some tools also for Arabic. The Octopus was one of them. It does a lot of things: summarization, dialectization, paraphrase, transliteration, and so on. I have 5 more minutes, so I really need to run fast. This is Jasmine in action. Okay, Arabic visual culture. This is something that we really care about, because it's not only text. Text is good, but it can be boring sometimes. Let's just agree on that. Like I like image. So when we go around, we want to actually use our cameras to like point it to something, and then the model can talk to me about what I'm seeing, ask it questions about it, and so on. So we started working on vision language models, and we wanted to do this at an Arabic, an Arab world scale. We just wanted to reflect the different cultures in the different countries in the Arab world, and you can see the diversity there. It's a bunch of images put together. So basically, we built 2 models. One is called Peacock, which handles the standard Arabic. So you give it an image, then it can describe it, can do question answering and so on about the image. And then we built a small model called Dalla. Dalla is like for coffee. It's like the postdoc worked in this is Fakhruddin al-Wajih, who is from Yemen, so he chose the word. I let him do it this time. So this is like Peacock. This was published a year ago, and at that time it was actually better than ChatGPT version 4 that exists, in the sense that it kind of like knows more about the Arab culture. And when we ask it in a particular dialect, it responds in that dialect. It doesn't cover all the Arabic dialects at the time. We focus on 3 or 4. But ChatGPT would actually respond in standard Arabic, which is not what you want. The idea is, how do we go from there to something like really big that covers like, many other places in the Arab world, that covers all these environments, that cover all the activities that people do in their daily lives, and so that's kind of the imagination that we have, and the thinking, because also there is a lot of cultural heritage. I'm flying to Paris after this, and I'll have a lot of meetings with people in the UNESCO, and they care really about cultural heritage. They care about the memory of the world, and so on. And there are real opportunities to actually create models that are very intimate to our cultural heritage in that sense. So that's the motivation. Okay, last, community projects. I mentioned that we are also doing lots of things with people from many, many different countries. I talked about Casablanca as a project that does speech recognition for a number of Arabic dialects, so that's already explained. Let me talk about Palm and then Pearl. Palm was actually, these are 2025 works. Palm is a data set for Arabic instructions. Like you want to go to the model, and let's say you are from Libya or Tunisia or Morocco or UAE or Iraq or Saudi Arabia, and you want to ask about something that is really known only within your country. The model will not know. So we wanted actually to create an opportunity for people to use their, to talk about their local cultures to these models. So what we did is we put together a team of 40, I think 43 people from across the whole Arab world, and we worked together for a whole year. And we have like weekly meetings, like very laborious work, but very, very rewarding. I think this paper got the best paper award in ACL this year, the best paper resource award. So let me actually show it to you very quickly. These are some of the people who are involved. It's culturally inclusive, linguistically diverse data set for Arabic LLMs. Many people in the in the authorship, and then this is how it looks like. It covers many, many different topics. You can ask a model to explain something. You can ask a model to give a short answer, to write, to lead, to give you a list, and so on. Different topics and different skills and abilities. And this covers the whole set of these countries and all these topics: environments, proverbs, food, politics, sciences, travel, technology, and so on. Very large scale project that I'm really very proud about, and I'm very thankful that we had a team that collaborated on this. Very diverse, we kind of test many different things and so on. So I don't have a lot of time because I want to wrap this up. I would say that the other work that we did, and this was Palm was presented in ACL this year in Vienna. This was presented in Suzhou in China, also this year in EMNLP. Pearl is a multimodal, culturally aware Arabic instruction dataset, also a big team of people, and here's how it looks like. So basically, we wanted to go to each culture or each country and see what are the things that people see within their country that maybe they would want to ask the models about. And, different types of animals, different types of architecture. Let me give you this example. If you see, this is an example about, there's like a برج التقليدي, برج الرياح التقليدي. And you can ask the model, why is it built? Like, what is the purpose of this? And it turns out that this is for ventilation. We want the air to come out somehow. So it's related to the local context, like the climate and so on and so forth. Can these models actually talk about this at that intimate level, at that very local level? And, like you go to like what people eat, different types of what people wear and use and so on. So this again was like really across the whole Arab world. And we had, again, a very big team that is working in there. And yeah, there is a pipeline how we did this and whatnot. And the interesting thing, like this is probably one of my last slides. Okay, these are actually not real people, so we generated this with AI. But the idea is this is filled, right? But except that, this is, do you know what this is? What country? Can you tell? Okay, this is UAE, right? But if you go here, this is what? Qatar. Great. What's your name? Dina? Thank you. And this is? And this is? But it's all filled, right? So we wanted actually to challenge the models, even with a shared concept, there is a little bit of variation. And we wanted to know if the models would be able to do this. So we created images that are related to these shared images, like coffee, the way coffee is presented in different countries, like food. It'll be the same meal or like the same dish, but it's like done in different way. It looks differently across the different countries. And so this is one of the things that we also kind of like treated within Pearl. I hope that some of this can inspire some thinking. The whole idea there is you want to build AI, you want to build AI that deals with language, make it such that it serves people the way people want, not what's in my mind. I just have to work with people who are using the technology, who knows the needs there, and who actually have ideas about what these needs are, what the ways they need to be served, and so on and so forth, and in ways that are really agrees with the culture, the local culture. I cannot sit here and say, okay, Google will build this for me, OpenAI will do it for me, and so on. No, Google will not build it for me. I need to kind of participate and have my say and contribute and so on, because I know more about my language, my local culture, my people. So this is why I believe that the technology needs to be built with the hands of the people who will use the technology. This is why it goes back to Dr. Abdullah's introduction today is about universities and the role of universities in societies and so on, investing in people who can actually build the technology for their own societies, for their own communities. With that, this is okay. Another model that we call Nile chat. I didn't know that there are more slides, but this does this is an LLM that works for the Egyptian and the Moroccan dialects. And yeah, okay, just entertain you with if Dr. Khalid gives me more minute, maybe. I have to say that Dr. Khalid is so very polite. He doesn't really, This is I can anybody speaks Moroccan here? No? Yes? No? Okay. That's okay. but this is like كيفاش غادي تتصرف في حالة لقيني بواحد المغربي بالمرة I don't know. So this is like Moroccan, and then the model كمساعد ذكاء اصطناعي المبرمج باش يكون محترم ومهذب في كل تفاعلاته في حالة لقيت بواحد المغربي للمرة الأولى غادي نتبع الآداب المغربية للتعارف. And so this is a model that actually speaks the Moroccan dialect. So we built this model to, this paper was, Nile chat was about the methods. We kind of have introduced a method that shows if you want to build language models that speak the dialect, here is one way to do it. And we will show you how to do it for two dialects in the same model. And it works for Moroccan, as you can see. More examples is somebody asking about Marrakesh, for example, information about Marrakesh, or what does this المثل المغربي mean اللي بغى العسل يصبر على قريص النحل, something. So Egyptian as well. ما هو الزليج المغربي صفه بجملة واحدة باللغة العربية الفصحى. This is very specific. We're asking the model about something, and so this is just to show that yes, the model speaks Moroccan dialect, but it actually can speak still standard Arabic, like modern اللغة العربية الفصحى. And then going to Egypt, اديني 5 نصايح ازاي احافظ على وزني، لان كل اكل متوازن، نشرب ميه كتير، مارس الرياضه بانتظام، قلل من الاكل المصنع، مارس الاكل الواعي، whatever. So it's just like showing that it can actually speak Egyptian Arabic as well. We presented this last month also in EMLT. And this is led by my postdoc, who's actually Moroccan. His name is Abdul-Mageed. This is outdated, some of the students, postdocs, and so on in my research group, and just a word of thank you to all the organizations that funded some of our research. Some organizations are not here, so I need to update this slide as well, but thank you for everybody, and that's it. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I know that I tend to speak a lot, but yeah, thank you.